Well, hey everybody, welcome. Welcome to my presentation. I'm Dave Linthicum. I've been in the industry for a long period of time. Most recently, I was the Chief Cloud Strategy Officer at Deloitte for about 7 years, and prior to that, CTO about a half a dozen times, and a bunch of other roles and responsibilities. It's fun, and I'm glad to be here for AI Infra Forum, and we're going to talk about some of the stuff related to how we're building infrastructure and where things are going. So I'm going to take a look at why alternative cloud platforms are becoming preferred for AI, which is an interesting topic. If you think about where things would be going, most people would have expected that public cloud platforms would be the place where this technology ends up, because obviously it's kind of the easy button for AI. The infrastructure is already there; they already have the ecosystem set up, and they're pretty good. So if you ever used AI on the cloud platforms, and I've been teaching and using them for many years since cloud first came around, and they sort of started providing AI capabilities, just really quick to set up and really quick to get going. And so, but it's interesting now where we're sitting in the marketplace that as we get into more GPU intensive stuff, strategies become a little bit more open, and also the alternative clouds out there become better. We're getting to a point where it's not as slam dunk anymore that we're using public cloud providers. AWS, Microsoft, and Google, but it's using the second tier providers. And so let's talk a bit about that. So some of the drawbacks of hyperscalers that I see out there, and by the way, I'm not anti-hyperscaler or anti-public cloud provider for AI. I think that it has a lot of usefulness and there's reasons to put workloads up there. It just has to be the right workload to make happen. The problem is that many times these things aren't as cost effective as some of the alternative cloud. Now, if you're dealing with applications, what AI applications are, where they're going to be 3 to 5 times the amount of money to build these systems, with generative AI capabilities, agentic workloads, small language models, utilizing large language models, things like that. People are going to be pretty picky about the infrastructure that they leverage because it can make or break the value that these applications or these systems will bring back to the business. So the big thing would be cost issues. Traditional hyperscalers are imposed GPU pricing. They're fairly high and they don't seem to be coming down. I just read an article today in terms of how people are surprised that the public cloud providers, AWS, Microsoft, and Google, the big three, are kind of holding fast to what they're charging for GPU capabilities on their systems, even with some of the alternatives out there. The other thing would be vendor lock-in. In other words, there is a certain amount of lock-in that comes along with leveraging a public cloud provider. If you're leveraging the native features of that provider using their AI tools and technology and storage systems, that is going to be a transformation cost if you try to move it to another platform, either back on premises or back to another cloud provider or to an alternate cloud provider. And so that's going to be a core concern out there as well. So in other words, it's, what are my exit costs if I do have to hit the eject button on this cloud provider, and how much is it going to cost me to get these systems off? Now, many of these AI systems are going to become strategic, innovative differentiators for these businesses out there. So it is going to become the business. And so if they're putting that much stake into building these systems, they're thinking long and hard about the partner infrastructure that they're going to leverage to make it happen. Finally, operational concerns, general purpose configuration, overwhelm users with unneeded features, and they can result in inefficiencies in specific tasks. If I hear anything about complaints from AI architects, people who are in my class, things like that, who are building these things, it's going to be that these things come with too much complexity. In other words, there are too many services they have to pick from, too many things that they have to leverage, too many things they have to turn on. And that complexity causes operational problems. So in other words, if you're going to operate the system, you want to do so in a consistent and simplistic way. That's going to lead to better security, fewer outages, better system performance. And the public cloud providers, just by the number of options they give you, which they view that as kind of core to their capabilities, they're going to be a bit of a challenge sometimes. So the alternative cloud platforms, we have a bunch of choices out there. We have the private and hybrid clouds out there. Normally, when you have private clouds are paired with a public cloud provider. Can be a private cloud platform, like VMware Tanzu and AWS or, what have you. But we do have OpenShift, we have Nutanix, we have VMware Tanzu, And these are fairly well-built platforms now. Now, when I was, working with cloud technology partners, 8 or 9 years ago, when I put together private cloud providers, I put together a private cloud solution. It was a bit of an engineering project to get something done, to get the OpenStack stuff up and running, and not so much anymore. So a lot of the private cloud platforms out there offered by VMware, HPE, Red Hat, and the other enterprise cloud providers out there are pretty turnkey in what they're able to provide. Now, they're not on demand, so we can't, go to a website and, start turning on GPU instances and uploading our systems. You're going to actually have to deal with physical hardware, but they're getting very good at getting these things allocated. Most people who leverage private cloud providers never see the hardware. And so they make a deal with a colocation provider and managed service providers. They set them up on their behalf. They get them configured, they get them running, and they get them operating. So no one's using enterprise clouds anymore. No one's running around hiring data center managers. Those are normally going to be outsourced roles where, 15, 20 years ago, that's the way we did everything. Dedicated GPU cloud providers, providers like CoreWeave, Lambda Labs, Vast AI, and GPU pricing focused on infrastructure and include the ability to kind of provide these systems as a service. And the big one now would be CoreWeave. They're about to go public, many billions of dollars in valuation based on this, and they just kind of focus. And this is a digital currency uh, vendor that pivoted to providing GPUs as a service, and now they saw a nice little niche in that market. And so enterprises are at the same time trying to get GPUs that are going to be on demand, used as a cloud-based resource, but they don't want to go to the major cloud providers because of the cost issue and the complexity issue we just talked about. Alternatives like CoreWeave, Vast AI, they provide very competitive pricing for leveraging these things as a service. And I always tell people, if you're looking at infrastructure now, you're looking at the public cloud providers, you should look at this as an alternative. In many instances, not all, they can be significantly cheaper, significantly lower cost to deploy, and the operations costs are about the same. So, in other words, you're leveraging a public cloud provider, and so you're dealing with that through the same sort of a management infrastructure. But remember, we've been dealing with multiple clouds, multi-cloud platforms for the last 10 years. Most enterprises already run multiple clouds. And so this is basically adding another cloud set of cloud services on your portfolio. And then the regional providers, people that exist in particular countries that just focus on that particular country, DigitalOcean, yeah, and the other ones that are, sitting all over the world. And Lido has one, Little, I think it's called, which is a grocery provider. I'm sure there's a bunch of them around here. I'm sure there's one near you, but in Germany, they decided to open up a regional provider or a sovereign cloud provider, and they're able to provide very good cloud services for the German region. And obviously, since they're specialized, since they're located in Germany, they understand the compliance issues and things like that. And many German-based companies are looking to leverage that asset for their public cloud asset. Obviously, a public cloud provider, but only serves a particular market. A regional market, it's sovereign to a particular country, and those are good alternatives as well that are going to be more cost efficient. So the benefits of alt cloud platforms would be cost efficiency. That's the big one. Lower GPU rental rates, fixed subscriptions, spot on rentals. You can figure out where the hardware is going to be located, the point of presence you're going to use. And so that's attractive to a lot of the enterprises these days. Go back 10, 5 years, 10 years, it was cloud only. We're going to move everything to AWS or everything to Google or everything to Microsoft or all of the above. That's no longer the case because I think they see cloud as being a very high priced alternative out there. And according to some research that I've been doing recently, the CEOs are really kind of coming together to realize that they're not going to dedicate their infrastructure to moving it to public cloud providers. Well, 5 years ago, that would be their story. Specialization, alternative cloud platforms are specifically tailored for high performance CPUs. So all CoreWeave does is provide access to resources and infrastructure that supports AI, GPU-based services and storage-based services using that. And that's helpful because we're not dealing with a public cloud provider that does object storage and block storage and file systems and supports any number of core-based platforms, but all they do is provide infrastructure that supports AI. And then cutting-edge hardware, the faster adoption of state-of-the-art CPUs like NVIDIA H100s, So if you look at CoreWeave and some of their minions out there that are in that space, they're very particular about the processors they provide, and they're able to pivot and get those things up and running fairly quickly. So you're not waiting for the public cloud provider to introduce a new hardware offering. That kind of stuff just kind of happens. And in many instances, the processor vendors, in this case, NVIDIA, have a partnership with the companies. NVIDIA has not only a partnership with CoreWeave, but they have an investment. And so they're incentivized to get them the newest technology out there. And obviously, that's going to benefit the users. So how do you navigate some of the risks and challenges here? None of this stuff is free without risk, and it's not all puppy dogs and apple pies when you start moving in this direction. You have to look at the trade-offs in leveraging this technology, and this is no different. So provider viability would be the big one. Are we worried about, putting our stake in a particular GPU as a service provider and having them go belly up in a few years because they can't get the investments, or having them bought by a competitor, and then having the services you're depending on eliminated? That's going to be a risk. And many of these lower cost providers are going to do just that. They're going to end up selling their existing infrastructure because that's the way business works. And obviously, the market normalizes and acquisitions occur, and you got to kind of figure out how this stuff is going to bear out. Normally, it's not as risky as people think. If these companies are bought, normally they're going to be absorbed into another set of infrastructures, very much like the infrastructure that you're using, and they're going to support the services either in perpetuity or for a long enough period of time where it's not going to damage you that much. But there's still that risk. You have to, figure out exit strategies and those things occurring where that's not likely to occur with AWS, Microsoft, or Google. But you got to remember they shut down services all the time on those platforms. So you're not necessarily getting around provider viability, but you're getting into the service viability over time. Feature completeness: alternative platforms may lack advanced features like ML pipelines, integrated data lakes, and they're not going to have one-stop shopping for everything and anything out there. They're not going to be one-stop shopping for all the storage systems and the databases that are out there. And again, you may have to set up a heterogeneous cloud environment where you're leveraging aspects of, say, something like CoreWeave or something like CoreWeave and the public cloud provider services. And the good thing now, we know how to deploy and build multi-cloud scenarios, and so we can do that. But we're not going to have everything and anything that's going to be on these regional cloud providers and these GPU as a service providers. Stability concerns: regional and small providers may not have a global footprint or capacity and support enterprise grade scaling. And that would be a concern if you're an international business. They can't scale to the links that some of the hyperscalers can do. That's why they're called hyperscalers. And also points of presence. If you start opening up offices in other countries, they may not have a point of presence in that country. And so therefore you have to deal with a latency issue or figure out another cloud solution for those implementations. Decision framework for aligning platforms and workloads, workload requirements, match platform choice with the workload needs. Again, that's fundamental, but people seem to be missing that. So if we're going to take a workload and look at it, we're going to figure out the best viable, most optimized platform for that workload or data set. And that needs to be done. And that needs to be done with an objective, open mind in terms of what options are out there and which ones you should leverage. And we deal with this every day in my generative AI architecture class. And certainly in my LinkedIn learning videos on that as well. But the reality is that's often lost. So people have a tendency to kind of move to areas where they're comfortable, and they're definitely comfortable with the hyperscalers now. They're, attend reInvent every year, or Ignite, and Google Next, and they're all in with these infrastructures. I think we have to kind of decouple ourselves from that and open our minds a bit more so we can save money and bring more value back to the business, which is the purpose and the reason we're doing this. Cost benefit analysis: figure out the business cases to make this happen. And see some of the businesses out there that are having a hard time in figuring out the business cases for some of the AI systems. But you need to become good at doing that. It has to prove its viability. And by the way, it doesn't mean that everything has to be AI. AI is going to be a specific technology that's used for a specific purpose, and that's the way it's going to bring the most value back to the business. People have a tendency to over apply it, and I think that's the risk right now. In fact, I think in 3 or 4 years, we're going to hear a lot of horror stories about lots of companies that spend a lot of money on applying AI capabilities where they had no business applying AI capabilities. So you should ask yourself, should you do it? You know you can do it, but should you do it? Provider stability, the ability to access stability of smaller GPU-focused cloud providers to mitigate potential disruptions. And so, again, have an exit strategy. So if you're moving to a second tier, third tier cloud provider, cloud infrastructure, all cloud, private cloud, some other on-prem, or public cloud vendor or regional cloud vendor, you got to have an exit strategy. So think through with the team, what are we going to do if these guys go away? What are we going to do if we expand our business to another country, if we're using a regional or sovereign provider? All that stuff should be baked in the cake. And I think that, this comes down to the P word, planning. You have to put together a planning infrastructure, how much money you're going to spend, and how you're going to leverage this stuff. So case studies that we have out there, CoreWeave for the AI model training, they presented demonstrated 40% better cost efficiency compared to AWS, NVIDIA, A100 cluster compared to AWS for NVIDIA A100 clusters. So they're using the same processors and basically providing the same infrastructure. They can do 40% better on the cost. And they have to do that because if they were the same price as AWS, they wouldn't get any business. So these guys always have to offer a discount, which is great because ultimately we're able to leverage some very sophisticated environments, some very sophisticated processors, and do so at the fraction that we're paying for AWS, Microsoft, or Google. And this translates into savings, the organization, heavy AI training workloads, and so they can do a lot for less money, which is incredibly important because some of these things, as I'm pricing them out, they're going to be $1 million a month to maintain it. And $1 million a month in AWS, would be 600,000 a month with one of these systems, and that's a significant savings over time, and that's going to translate into bringing more value back to the business, and you're not giving things up in terms of not having access to the infrastructure you need to support those workloads. VMware Tanzu cost reduction. Major enterprises reduce cloud bills by 35% over some of the public cloud providers by maintaining full cloud flexibility and by using a hybrid-based infrastructure. So they're using Tanzu on-prem and pairing it up with a hyperscaler, Microsoft, AWS, or Google, or they could even use Tanzu on-prem and then pair up a regional cloud provider or a GPU as a service provider like CoreWeave. And you're able to do this with a significant cost savings because, again, you're localizing the particular workload and the data set, in this case, the AI workload, on the hardware where it's going to have the most optimized and the best business value. And then OVH Cloud for GDPR compliance, and they're a European company. They're a sovereign cloud capability. And they're really good at doing the GDPR stuff, and they can do so at a lower cost than hyperscalers. And therefore, you're leveraging a local company that's within the country. You don't have a latency problem. You have a point of presence there that's going to be there, and you're leveraging a company, a cloud provider that knows how to deal with your particular compliance needs. In this case, GDPR. Obviously, the big hyperscalers know how to deal with that as well, but that's a small fraction of what they do. If we're dealing with a regional provider, they're able to focus on the specific compliance issues that you're dealing with for the country that you're in, which is helpful. And I would even say, this should be a consideration, even if you're a multinational company and you have a deployment in Germany, the ability to leverage a particular sovereign cloud provider for that particular German division because of the capabilities and the ability to deal with the sovereign issues with how they handle data, for example. Some cases you're not allowed to send data out of the country, and this will get around that. So future trends in alternative cloud platforms. Well, I think are going to be a lot of growing adoption. I'm seeing a lot of interest, certainly in my YouTube videos. People are eating up that content because they're looking for alternatives. They're going to be cheaper alternatives than the big public cloud providers out there. I think the public cloud providers are great, and they're definitely going to have a role in this market. But if you look at, say, the past 6 months, the cloud market has been exploding around the use of AI, but the public cloud providers have not been getting the share of that market that they thought they would be getting. And that's quite frankly, the fact of the matter is that there's alternatives out there. People are exercising those alternatives. They're moving a lot of these workloads back to on-prem. And it's no longer a slam dunk to leverage a hyperscaler for AI workloads. Feature expansion. Alternative providers expand the feature sets to rival the hyperscalers. They're going to get better at what they do. Someone like CoreWeave is about to go public. They're going to get some more investment into them, and they're going to build a significantly better, GPU-based cloud. And so that's going to be their niche. And they're going to work on building it up, offering more services, more things that you need, different security services, different operation services, things like that. And you'll be able to take advantage of that expansion. So in other words, they're providing more convenient features, very much like the hyperscalers, but still maintaining the discounted price. And then hybrid dominance. I think that hybrid cloud strategies are becoming the norm, for optimizing cost and performance around AI. And so no longer is it going to be try to push everything onto a public cloud provider or even try to push everything on-prem. It's the ability to leverage both, the best of both worlds, and your ability to look at the particular workloads, in this case AI, and your storage needs, and then figure out where you should localize them. Again, where you're going to set them up to bring the most optimized value back to the business. And that's the name of the game. So key takeaways from this strategic move, transitioning to alternate platforms is strategic move to align ultimately AI workloads, and it provides customizable, specialized, and cost-efficient infrastructures. And that's key here. Cost-efficient is key to this. And it, again, getting into architectures that are looking at the viability of this technology, looking at the particular workloads, and then figure out the platform where it needs to run. This should never be about picking one platform. I always get the question, who's got the best AI or who's the platform? It doesn't exist. Ultimately, the best platform for your AI workloads is going to be where it's able to return the most value back to the business. And that's going to be GPU as a service system. That's going to be a regional cloud provider. In some cases, that's going to be a hyperscaler. And you have to look at each of the architectural needs and each of the business needs of these particular workloads and these particular data sets and how AI is going to be leveraged. It's going to be very different kinds of problems you're solving if you're building an LLM. Hopefully, no one's doing that. Small language models, tactical deployments of AI systems, agentic-based deployments, things like that. Those all come with their own set of unique needs and capabilities. And again, you have to align the right platform with those needs. So cloud computing, I think, is going to evolve into something that's going to be very heterogeneous. And we saw this coming for a long period of time. So everybody was looking for the convergence around a single public cloud provider. And then it was like, okay, three public cloud providers are in the game now. And then maybe six public cloud providers. And I think now we're back to, in the teens in terms of the viable systems that are out there, probably more than that, 20s or 30s. And the alternatives that are available to us that are going to be real, truly solutions you're able to leverage. So they're not fly-by-night companies. These are invested companies, provide key value for you today, and you're able to pick them. So if you think about it, back in the day when cloud first started up, we had like 30 cloud providers. Every telephone company out there had a cloud. We contracted down to just a few, say a half dozen viable providers. And then we're expanding it out now, becoming more heterogeneous, becoming more diversified. And I think a lot of that stuff is being driven by the need to find more valuable, more business value oriented platforms for the AI capabilities because of the cost of doing that. Well, thank you very much for listening to my presentation. Please reach out if you have any questions. Thank you very much.